says it all. But we'll wrap up and we'll go up to Scotland and talk about Rangers. Now, Daniel, they have quite a few players actually that are out of contract end of the season. One of those names to mention is Borna Barisic. Now, sources have told Football Insider he's ready to quit the club when his contract expires in June. Is that a surprise, do you think, to Rangers fans?
Nah, I think most of them were probably hoping he left a while ago. His performances have really dropped in the last 18 months or so. And it was interesting in the January window, they had Ridvan, who's playing really well suddenly. Like he's kind of come over his injury problems and he's been playing really well. And then there was talk about them selling him in the window. And it was really weird because Barisic is out of contract in the summer. And they were like actively looking for a replacement, but for the younger in-form option. So I thought that was really weird. But he didn't end up leaving, and now he seems to be the first choice left back. I'm not surprised Borna's leaving. I think there's going to be quite a few that will leave. I think Ryan Jack will probably leave. Kamar Roof will probably leave. And then I know Cyril Dessers he's kind of found a bit of form recently, and he only joined last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he moved on. Tom Lawrence has kind of got back in the team recently, but he's had a lot of injury problems. And Clement has spoken a lot about their injury issues and how they need to get on top of it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and move out a lot of those injury-prone players and replace them for someone who's not necessarily as good, but more reliable. I think there's that saying that availability is kind of the best ability sometimes. If you could be the best player in the world, if you never play, you're useless. So I think that will be a big thing for them this summer. Will be getting rid of injured players and bringing in people who are always available to play.
And Paul, one name to mention there that Daniel said, Kamar Roof, he's out of contract end of this season. What did you make of him at Leeds? Because it hasn't really worked out in Rangers of recent years. He started off really brilliantly when he moved up there. Recent injuries have caused him quite a few problems. What do you think is best for his career going forwards if he's the Leeds?
He's going to leave the club, isn't he? I mean, you look at the way he started. He was fantastic when he started, but I think Philippe Clement's come in and he's earned the right to manipulate his squad. You look at the results he's got, you look at where they are now in the league, joint top after last night's results. And I mean, you look at where they could potentially finish the season and what the manager's done. He is going to shuffle his pack, and he's earned the right to go to the boardroom, knock on the door, and say, "Look, this is what I want. This is what I need. I need you to back me." And I think he'll get that. And with players like Roof, yeah, I mean, for him personally, it's time to move on. Looking at his stats, I mean, played 3 league games last season, 9 league games this season, 1 goal last season, 1 goal this season, 6 in total last season in all competitions. And he's just not the player that he was when he first went up there. I mean, he hit the ground running, did really, really well. But as we all know, the FFP and, you know, towing the line financially, creating space in your squad and moving on players like that who for the last 2.5 seasons have played less than double figures in games and are not contributing. And I think for him personally, it's time for him to move.
Do you think Lundstrom will go as well, Daniel?
No. I think Clement's come out and said he wants to keep him. I think there's going to be talks ongoing. He's playing all the time. I would be surprised if he left. But again, if financially, if they can't agree a deal, then they've kind of put themselves in a hole. They did this last year with Morelos and Ryan Kent, where they kind of were negotiating a deal, running into the front, and they kind of lose all leverage. And they've done this quite a lot, and they've been criticised for it quite a lot. But I think this year, I think that's kind of Clement's thing, is he's going to try and get on top of all of this. He obviously sees potential in his current squad. He's brought in younger players like Ross McCausland has come in and done really well for them. They just signed Mo Diamande and Oscar Cortez. I think Cortez is on loan, but there's a buy option there. So I think he's trying to bring the age of the squad down. He's trying to change the profile of player. But they do need experience. Tavernier is in his 30s. Goldson is in his 30s. They're both still regulars. Jack Butland might be 30, but he's a senior player with a lot of experience. Lundstrom will add to that. Cantwell, I think, is in a similar kind of boat where he's not quite old, but he's more of a senior player in the squad. And I think they need to keep some of them around just for standards and experience in a bigger game. But Lundstrom's been playing well since he came in. I would be surprised if he left it.
And if you had to make an early call, like Paul kind of mentioned, they of course went joint level on points and goal difference after their win the other night. Early prediction, who wins the league this season?
Rangers.
Really? Why so?
I think there's a clear trajectory. I think they're clearly on the way up under Clement, and Celtic are still kind of finding their feet under Rodgers after Ange left. I think if this was last year's Celtic would have walked it. I think they would never have slipped up. But Celtic keep slipping up in games where you don't expect them to. I don't think the fans are entirely convinced by Brendan Rodgers. I don't think they were convinced when he came back, and I think they're even less convinced now that they're 6-7 months in. Their best players aren't really performing. Kyogo's got a fraction of the goals he had last year. I think they've lost Hatate and Cameron Vickers for a few months as well with injuries. So I think they're just kind of finding their feet, and I think Rangers have got all the momentum behind them. But as usual in that league, it's going to come down to the Old Firm games, isn't it, really?
Well, the last Old Firm to mention in there is in April. Paul, how much of an eye will players have on that, or actually in the back of their minds, or will they simply be focused on that one game at a time attitude?
Well, they have to be. I mean, it's the Old Firm only comes into play so long as neither drop points against teams that they're expected to beat. I mean, that's going to be the key. I think everyone will focus on the Old Firm like everybody does normally. But actually, if you take your eye off the ball and drop points elsewhere, that's where the league could be won and lost. Yes, if they're both 100% between now and the end of the season, the Old Firm it'll be massive because of the league. It's always massive. On a global scale, it's a huge, huge game. We know that, and the importance of it to both football clubs. But actually, the importance becomes even bigger if neither club drop points where they are not expected to drop points. This league will be won and lost where teams don't drop points elsewhere.
I think it's also important to mention, Rangers are still in Europe. So their Europa League stuff is Thursdays. So they're going to be playing after Celtic quite a lot, which is always, I know a lot of people say that's a bad thing in a race because you're always under pressure. And with the quicker turnarounds, that might give Celtic a bit of a chance, or a bit more of a chance, should I say. But I still think Rangers, but there's something to think about is the fact that they're still in Europe.
And Daniel, do you think in terms of Clement, if we compare Clement versus Rodgers, do you think actually Rangers fans can be really excited? Because it seems to be most really feel that they have got a one-of-a-kind manager in terms of someone that knows the club very well, has settled really quickly, but also has proven that he can pick up results.
I think they should be. I think they should be really excited. He seems to know exactly what he wants to do. He seems to have a way of doing it. And you saw we were kind of talking about with Ten Hag earlier about how we don't know what he wants to do. You can see from the first couple of games what Clement wanted to do with this Rangers team. His recruitment has done well so far. Cortez has come in and done really well in his first few games. Diomande was really highly rated. But he's also using players that weren't being used before and getting things from them. Like Liam Balogun came in and was really, really solid for a good few games before he broke his face recently. But even then, you got John Souttar's then come in and he's done just as well, which kind of tells you maybe it's not the players, it's just the system. And he just knows how to get the best out of these players. He's using youngsters in Ross McCausland, like I said earlier, who's done really well, kind of come in from the blue and done excellently. Scott Wright wasn't being used much. He's now getting minutes here and there, and I think he got a goal in the cup final. So he's using his squad really well. He's getting on top of the injury issues, and he clearly has a plan for what he wants to do at Ibrox, and that suggests he wants to be there long term. Rodgers, we already know if someone from the Premier League comes calling, he's going to be tempted. He's done it before. And that was when they were winning. So if they're not winning so much this time around and somebody comes calling, why wouldn't he go again? So there's always going to be that uncertainty there. So if I was a Rangers fan, I would be really excited because he seems to have his foot on the ball and everyone is pulling in the same direction, seemingly. So they should be excited if they're not.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.